Hello everyone, and this is my review for TNA Impact Wrestling on September 9th, 2015. And, it's really hard to say here because, again, you got a lot of, you had some really good and entertaining matches tonight, but so much of it just felt so forced as well in the terms of storyline, especially with the build between GFW versus TNA. I'll just get into that right off the bat. I mean, they kind of forced the Lady Tapa Awesome Kong feud into the Knockouts title picture to make it a fatal four-way. So you have three TNA knockouts going up against, and you have Lady Tapa in there as the only GFW one, and then you have a fatal four-way for the next week. The match with Brooke and Gail Kim, though, had no real backstory to it. For the Knockouts title, was a really good match, but then they forced the whole GFW thing in there. And honestly, a lot of the show needed to focus around GFW versus TNA, which I feel like in some cases they really messed up with as well. In the terms of that actual storyline, and also the not using it in a lot of other areas. I mean, you had pretty much most of the night of them kind of saying how much dissension there's going to be about throughout TNA. Like, you had Eli Drake and Jesse and and Kenny King. Basically, is like everybody kind of dogging, all the heel TNA people dogging Drew Galloway throughout the entire night. It led to, in one case, it led to a pretty decent six-man tag out there, but in the end, you got the sense that, like, even like they put everything in the terms of how to make TNA not look so good, though they win back the tag team titles later that night. The promo with Jeff Jarrett and Bobby Roode, I thought, was actually really good. That was one really good spot of the night through the entire, I can't really say invasion angle, this corporate takeover angle that they're going with GFW versus TNA here. So it was like it felt like they were building something there with Bobby Roode and Jeff Jarrett in a possible turn or something in that sense. So, I'll get more into it a little bit later on with the whole GFW versus TNA thing, because you do have to go into some of the storylines that they were building that aren't around that, which the one I'm not really too fond of, but they're continuing it on. The whole Chris Melendez versus Eric Young feud with basically Eric Young taking Chris Melendez's leg after Chris Melendez lost the match to him, and basically decent promo from them trying to, with Chris Melendez trying to challenge him one more time, and basically what you're getting through Eric Young as well, trying to say, oh, I'm going to end your career, all that kind of stuff. Not a bad promo. I'm not a big fan of this storyline, basically because it was based around Eric Young saying, I don't want like a title match or something if I get a win. No, I'm going to take your leg. I'm going to make this personal by taking your leg. It's like, okay. It never sat well with me. And I'm kind of hoping it comes to an end here with next week's match and everything in that sense. So we'll see where they go with that. And then of course the whole EC3 Jeff Hardy storyline, where Jeff Hardy's now EC3's personal assistant. You get a decent promo out of this one. This was not one of my most favorite EC3 promos, especially as a heel, or one of his best heel promos, at least in my personal opinion. I've been a big EC3 fan in terms of his heel character, but I would say this week wasn't necessarily the best. It kind of, like, they did a good job of making, Jeff kind of feel uncomfortable, everything in that sense. I did like some of the aspects that they threw throughout the match, like, oh, they want Jeff to take cheap shots, but Jeff refuses to do it in there with their match with Matt Hardy and Rockstar Spud. In the end, relatively good tag team match between them. It kind of Again, it is kind of like a whole force team with Rockstar Spud and Matt Hardy in there. You don't really have that whole normal type of tag team chemistry in there. And that's pretty obvious because, that's what it was designed to be, was kind of like two guys forced to team up against each other. They have a common enemy, which, Rockstar Spud's been out of this storyline for a while now. He's kind of hoisted back in there really quickly. But we'll see where they go with this, with the whole personal assistant thing. I liked a little bit with where they were going. I liked the aspect of you have EC3 and Tyrus trying to make Jeff Hardy feel as uncomfortable as possible, trying to make him do things he doesn't necessarily want to do, and where will they go with this? Will they start threatening his job if he doesn't do attacks or something like this in the end? So we'll see where they go with it. Semi-interesting start, but not necessarily the best way of going, at least not the best promo that we've seen in a long time from EC3 in this case. So now I want to go back into this whole GFW versus TNA thing. I said it last week, and I'm going to say it again this week. They're moving this storyline way too quickly. So you knew throughout the night, okay, let's just go back for comparison. We had the invasion angle, the whole WCW versus WWF at the time, which obviously was not that good of a storyline, mainly because they couldn't get most of the really good talents in there. So, both of these areas have their really good talents and everything in that sense around, but they have to move it so quickly. It's like, okay, now we have to have dissension between TNA and here, but you're never going to get any dissension now with the GFW guys in some sense, because it would have been nice to see it drawn out a little bit longer, so not only would you get the dissension between the heels and the faces of TNA, but eventually a little bit of dissension between the GFW guys, and you just won't get that because it all ends next week. In that sense, like, will they have a betrayal at the end of next week or something? In this case, obviously they were going to have some kind of betrayal this week on the TNA side, and they did a really good job of making you think it was supposed to be Bobby Roode in this case, just with that promo with him and Jeff Jarrett. And it would have made complete sense if it was Bobby Roode that ran out at the end of the night with Chris Mordensky and Drew Galloway with the whole man advantage on the end, to be the one to interfere. But out of nowhere, they decided, let's put Eric Young into this. Okay, he's had nothing to do with this storyline at all. Like, he's had nothing to do with the whole GFW thing. He's had nothing to do with the TNA versus GFW storyline. Even before they did it as the corporate takeover, there was nothing with him outside of the bit that I think he did with Jeff Jarrett early on. But in the end, that was all you had from that. You didn't get anything else with him, and now he's the turncoat in TNA. It would have made so much more sense if you had it be Bobby Roode here. And because you had the good promo between them and everything. Like, there's times you want to be predictable with your storyline, because then that storyline makes sense. This was one of those times. This is not one of those times that you try to swerve everybody and going completely different in a completely different direction. A good swerve is like a good surprise return, something you didn't know it was coming, and it actually happened. So, at least in my mind, that's my own personal opinion. So, in my thought process here, they really dropped the ball on this one with who they had betray TNA to join up with the GFW guys. Now, I mean, they may still do something with Bobby Roode next week, but this was that time, especially with how quickly they're moving things along. This was that time in this particular match to do that, and they kind of missed the ball on that one. But, you know, I've not been a big fan of it, mainly because I've not been a big fan of this whole GFW versus TNA thing, mainly because of how quickly they're moving it along. And they did it all within one taping. And it's very rare that I actually talk about the aspect of them doing a whole bunch of tapings at once. I try to do each of these episodes as a single episode, so I'm not going to actually give spoilers away for next week. But, you know, they did this whole storyline within one taping, and since I can say that because we all know it ends next week, in that with that Lethal Lockdown match, and it's just like it got drawn out to the corporate takeover that I feel like they ended it they're going to be ending this too quickly. I would have liked to have seen them draw this out to like a Bound for Glory type thing. You know, it's like, even then, that's still a rather quick storyline, but at least it would have been drawn out, fleshed out more a little bit. Here, you're like, have to go bang, 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 bang. Let's do what we need to do for a good invasion angle. It's like, oh, we need a betrayal, we need dissension. Like, we got to do this all in like 1 week. And it just didn't come off that good in my mind. When I was watching the show, it's like, this is like, okay, we gotta throw this at you, now we gotta throw this at you, now we gotta throw this at you. It's like, okay, they could have done this in little tidbits over like 3 or 4 or 5 weeks or something in that sense. And then let's do this Lethal Lockdown match at Bound for Glory, or the week after Bound for Glory, if they really want to do it for TV ratings purposes. That would have made it feel like it would have made more sense to go with. You could have made a storyline that wasn't necessarily so rushed. That, you know, you have a storyline of this kind of importance, you don't want to rush it, and it feels like they just rushed it so much in there, and I feel like they missed a good opportunity here to do something really good with both the GFW guys and the TNA guys. So overall, this show, the quick moving aspect of the TNA versus GFW thing, that's a downer. That's a downer for me. I mean, match quality wise tonight, great stuff. You got some really good matches on there. The tag team title match was a great match to watch. The match with Drew Galloway and Chris Mundinsky was good as well. He had a decent promo from Shira as well, talking about how he's going to go after James Storm. But again, that's another area of them not having where they could have done maybe a little bit more focus on GFW versus TNA in there. This storyline could have waited a little bit, or something in that sense. But overall, not a horrible show. Like, the whole aspect of the matches being good this week, them having some really good matches in there, kind of makes up for the aspect of how poorly I feel like they've treated this invasion / corporate takeover storyline in that sense. So overall, okay show. We'll see how they end everything next week with the GFW and TNA storyline, and see where they go with that. Maybe they can sneak something where it's like, oh, we can get maybe 3 or 4 more weeks out of this with after next week's show, but I highly doubt that. I'm hoping to see the end of the whole Eric Young versus Chris Melendez storyline. Like I said, I don't know if it was an aspect of just being uncomfortable with the fact that they were using the prosthetic leg as the gimmick throughout the entire thing, or if it was just something else with the storyline. But like, this storyline never really worked with me in that sense. So we'll see how they decide to end that next week as well, and or if they do end it. Also, you have the aspect of the Knockouts title next week, and in there with the Fatal 4-Way. We'll see where they go with that as well. And yeah, that is my review for TNA Impact Wrestling this week, and I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I thank you guys for watching.